Starting a business can seem like a daunting task, unless you have a partner like Shopify. They have the tools you need to start and grow your business. From designing a website to marketing to selling and beyond, Shopify can help with everything you need. There's a reason millions of companies like Mattel, Heinz, and Allbirds continue to trust and use them. With Shopify on your side, turn your big business idea into... Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer.
Hi there, and welcome to Raising Me. I'm Adrienne Stein. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are talking about money today, specifically how to help younger kids understand the importance and the value of it in a way that feels healthy and confident and maybe not so stressful. Here's the thing. Most of us are making money decisions all day long. We just don't always say them out loud or even realize that we're doing it. Like, say, choosing one cereal over another because it's on sale, or maybe it's deciding we're going to wait until next week or even next month to buy something. Those little internal decisions, they are actually really great teaching moments, and kids can start understanding how choices get made a whole lot earlier than we even think. So if you're listening to this and thinking, look, I didn't grow up with great money lessons, or I am hardly an expert when it comes to this, here's the thing. You don't have to be. Simply having the conversation is the most important part, as we are going to learn today. My guest is Mary Dyer. She is awesome. She is with the Finance Authority of Maine, which is also known as F.A.M.E. Mary shares some easy and age-appropriate ways to talk with kids about earning and saving and delayed gratification and really making thoughtful decisions. Plus, some practical scripts for real life that you are going to want to know, like when your child, say, wants to have everything in the cart in Target. So a really big thank you to our sponsor of Sweetser Behavioral Health. And now, let's get into it. So, Mary, welcome back. I am so grateful to have you here, and such a pleasure, as always, to chat with you.
Yes, it's so great to be here. Thanks again for having me.
Let's just start right off with it, because here you are, this money expert. You also have children of your own who are now grown. So you come with, sort of the expertise, but also the lived experience. Are there any tough money lessons that you had with your kids that come to mind?
Oh, absolutely. So I think, some of my best experience, doing this in my work is obviously extremely valuable, and all of the experience professionally. But I think what I've learned in raising my kids and understanding sort of throughout their lives how we can encourage them to learn about money, make good decisions, I've learned along the way in terms of how to do that, and made mistakes and tweaked things along the way, had those conversations. So you say you're an expert. I feel like when it comes to kids, I'm still learning and still trying to figure out how to set a good example and how to have those conversations that are meaningful and educational without causing fear and anxiety around money. So, you and I have been talking a lot about kids in college, you're getting ready to send your daughter off to college. And, I think about when my oldest was in college, he attended a highly selective college and was, surrounded by a lot of kids who had a lot of resources, who came from families with a lot of money. And for us, a middle-class family, my husband's a teacher, that wasn't our experience. And so I think, as I look back and raising my kids, and kind of more recently, that college time frame, that was probably one of the most challenging times, and helping my son to feel like he could fit in despite the fact that he didn't have money to fly off to spring break and, go skiing, across the country and do some of those things that kids who came from more means and more significant family support. So I think that was a challenging time. And I think really encouraging him to remember that his classmates didn't have any money. It was their parents who had money, and that they would have to live and work and navigate their financial life just like he was. And helping him to kind of manage that time frame was was quite a challenge, but I think a wonderful life lesson that he carries with him to this day, that
Yeah,
we have a lot of people around us with money, but that doesn't mean that they don't have a lot of debt, that perhaps they don't have sufficient savings. There's usually a lot more to the story.
yeah, I mean, I definitely worry about that as we're looking at some schools that are a hefty price tag. And just knowing that is going to be a lesson that my daughter will have to learn, that there are families with all kinds of different resources. And I think even in the situations you're describing, there are really valuable lessons in that sometimes you have to learn by being in it. You can say
Absolutely.
all you want as a parent, well, sure, some people are going to be able to go to Cancun every spring break while they're in college. And maybe you won't be able to go every spring break while you're in college, and that's okay. But when they're in it, the pressure that kids can feel, uh, you know, uh, actually, I think is an important life lesson, and realizing that spring break ends and you're still okay, even if you stayed on campus for the week. But
Exactly. And maybe you
oh,
don't have credit card debt to
and
show for it, right?
exactly,
You haven't
exactly.
overextended yourself, and you've been resourceful about how can I have fun, in New England, here in Maine, what can I do with my friends and how can I be creative? And those skills carry with you,
Sure.
into adulthood.
Well, let's talk about those skills, because ultimately we want to set our kids up for success and to understand these lessons, even, from a young age. And so, as we talk about this conversation, I think we've had this conversation where we've looked at different ages, but I think for parents, how can we start with the youngest of kids, and what can that look like? And then if we haven't, what do those conversations look like when we're having them with older kids, right? Because we feel like maybe we didn't start at the right time.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
when we're talking about teaching our kids about money, because we can say that's a big term, but what does it really mean?
Well, it means something at every life stage, depending on how old your children are. If you have, preschool or elementary age kids, I think across all ages, the biggest thing that it means that's universal, regardless of how old your children are, is it's really about having the conversation
Hmm.
and having that dialogue at home. I think regardless of their age, it's less about the math and the dollars and cents than it is really building that conversation.
Even if we as parents don't feel like we know what we're talking about, that's
Exactly.
that's the important part, is just to having those conversations around it.
Exactly. So
Hmm.
you're building kind of awareness, you're encouraging or expressing kind of your values. And one of the things I often say to parents is, we internalize a lot around our just, money making decisions when we're at home, whether we're paying bills, we're in the grocery store and we're balancing, do I buy this and what's on my list and can I afford it? A lot of that's dialogue we're having internally. And so one of the best things that you can do with your kids is to verbalize a lot of that thinking that you're doing and those decisions that you're making internally or with your spouse or partner, and involving your children in that decision. So for young children, it's not necessarily diving into the numbers, but really helping them to understand that money is a tool, that we earn money and we're making decisions about how to spend our money, and really having that open dialogue that sometimes we have to wait in order to make a purchase, that we are saving and setting aside to make purchases later, and talking about the trade-offs. So whether it's you're taking them to the grocery store or you're making your grocery list at home or you're making financial decisions, having that conversation about it's a trade-off that I'm purchasing or setting aside money for this item now or later.
Mhm.
I think little kids, it's as simple as encouraging them to wait. And school teachers do this all the time. They're encouraging taking turns, waiting, kind of that delayed gratification. I think a wonderful way with little kids is to have a reward chart. And again, a lot of classroom teachers, they have the classroom economy with, stickers and reward charts. And I think having children, giving them that experience to earn over time for something big. And that might be an
Mm.
allowance, but it could just be stickers on a reward chart. And week to week, you're kind of, they're earning an opportunity to be successful for a future reward. And that could be monetary, it could be time, because that's what they really want from you. They want
Yeah.
your time.
No, I
So,
think that delayed gratification is a big one to underline, especially in today's sort of world and instant gratification. I also think too, when you're talking about some of these things, like I'm thinking in terms of like what I can do with my 7-year-old, even at the grocery store. Like, well, we'll buy this cereal instead of this cereal because it's a
yes,
$2 extra for this one. We don't need it. That's silly, right? Even though it's only $2, it's
right.
just helping to, if I'm hearing you correctly, just
Yeah,
saying out loud those things that you kind of
yes.
say it in your own mind, like, oh, we'll go with this one, not that one, kind of thing.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
thinking out loud. So you're making money decisions every single day, sometimes every single hour, and conveying that to your child, taking them to the grocery store and talking with them about how you're making that decision. That, if I make these purchases, maybe it's only $2 less, but $2 over several different purchases adds up. It's
Well,
that
and that it's
this,
not
yes,
necessary to spend
right,
extra, whether it's $2 or 200, it's not
exactly,
necessary to spend that extra, whatever it is, for whatever it might be.
exactly,
Right. It's just
exactly.
sort of that necessity, the need and
Yeah.
the want of it too. What do you find is the biggest mistake that we as parents generally make when we are talking about money with younger kids in particular?
Yeah, well, I think the language does matter. I think that you know, I think the big thing, and I speak for myself in this with my own kids, is internalizing it and not explaining. I think is probably one of the best things. So if you're in a store with your child and they want something, and you're afraid they're getting heightened, and it's going to become a tantrum type of
Mhm.
situation. I think rather than no, just an immediate no, giving them, validating, yeah, that's a really cool item. I can see why you might want that. But letting them know that, purchasing that item now means that we're not able to purchase this other item now or later. So I think explaining and giving dialogue to that decision making can be very, very helpful. So I think, it's not necessarily a mistake, but, just letting them know that, money is limited. It does run out. I remember my youngest at one point having the conversation with him about debit cards versus credit cards and this perception that he had that it was just this
Magic
endless,
card?
just a magic card and there was
Wouldn't that
no
be nice?
bottom
Yeah.
to it. And
Right.
and doing a real double take for me because I thought, because he was a little bit too old to not quite get that, I felt like. And I thought, how did that pass me by?
Yeah.
But in a cashless society, where kids aren't seeing us exchange dollars and bills, I'd not had that conversation out loud with
Yeah.
him, explaining to him how credit cards and debit cards work, what's the difference, that there is a limitation. And, so I think it's more than anything, thinking out loud and giving them a chance to experience money is one of the most important things that we can do. And when we don't do it, there's a danger that they're filling in the blanks and coming up with their own conclusions
From
without
friends, from online, from who
exactly,
knows where, or just their
exactly,
imagination.
exactly.
So,
Yeah.
when you're talking about having these sort of out loud conversations that normally might happen, just instinctual everyday decisions, at what age do we start that?
Oh, I think you can start it as early as preschool. I
Okay.
think it's never too early and it's never too late to begin having those conversations. So, for little kids, helping them to understand, needs, what are the things that we need We earn money, how we earn money, and they're going to know this. If you're outside of the home working, they're very clearly going to understand that connection. But helping them to understand how we earn money and what are the things that we use that money for that we would consider needs, things that we need to survive, food, shelter, clothing, those kinds of things, versus the things that we want. And you can begin to have those conversations fairly early. But again, never too late. If your kids are older and you feel like you've got a lot of catching up to do, that's not uncommon either. And you might be like me and all of a sudden think, oh my goodness, I haven't talked about that with my child. I haven't had that conversation with them.
Debit card versus credit card, for instance.
Yeah, exactly.
So, also I think as a parent too, you want to have these conversations explaining money is limited without making them feel anxious about it, right? Like
Exactly.
that is something maybe we as parents might internalize. Yeah. So how do we, explain money is limited without that making them feel anxious or any anxiety around that?
Exactly. So rather than using language like, oh, we're broke or we can't afford that, I think providing the context to your child, we can't, that's not part of our plan right now, that we make a plan for our money. We like to talk about a budget as being a spending plan. We make a plan for our money and that's not in our plan right now. Rather than we're broke, we need to think about that first, or that our money has gone to those things that we really need. And that's something we'll think about for the future. So I think it's adding the context, adding the color behind those statements and those decisions that you're making.
Well, what comes to mind too, Mary, is because there's a lot of talk about fixed and growth mindset, even too, by using language of we're broke. That's a fixed mindset versus that's not in our plan right now.
That's right.
That feels more in line with a growth mindset. It's not a never, it's a right now. This isn't what our priority is.
Exactly.
So that was kind of just a light bulb moment for me there. Yeah, no, I love that. And then, obviously allowance is an important part of the equation in general. So when and how do we start an allowance? Because usually I find it's like elementary school when they want to have, some spending money, or maybe certainly middle school. But is it earlier than that? Like when can we start allowance and what might it look like?
K-pop Demon Hunters Haja Boys breakfast meal and Huntrix meal have just dropped at McDonald's. They're calling this a battle for the fans. What do you say to that, Rumi?
It's not a battle. So glad the Saja Boys could take breakfast and give our meal the rest of the day.
It is an honor to share.
No, it's our honor.
It is our larger honor.
No, really. Stop.
You can really feel the respect in this battle. Pick a meal to pick a side.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. At participating McDonald's while supplies last.
Yeah. For me, and I still have my son's reward chart because it's just funny, the things that we wanted him to work on. I think reward charts as early as kindergarten or even earlier can be very powerful. Those visual reminders. So it may not be that they're earning, like I said, a dollar amount. They may be earning a movie on Friday after school is, done for the week. If they're in kindergarten, they might be earning time with you. They might be earning, if your kid's a little older, video game time, whatever it might be. I think really young children, those stickers and reward charts, visual, big poster board, visual charts can be really powerful. They need to see the progress. That's again, another challenge around our cashless society is kids are learn best when they can experience and visualize. And so having those savings jars and cash only, some of those approaches can be really powerful. But that's why I like reward charts. So maybe you start with little kids with reward charts because you're teaching a lot of things. You're teaching, that whole delayed gratification. They're building up over time for a future reward. their effort, whether it's their behavior or their, chores that they're doing at home, that's all adding up over time for a reward, just like when we work later on in life. So I would start with reward charts very, very young, as early as you feel like your kids can kind of comprehend the earning of a sticker. I know parents who do that as early as potty training, right?
Mm-hmm.
Really young.
Yeah, we actually did stickers on the potty every time.
Exactly. Yes. So that's very motivating. And that's their earliest job, if you will, right? They're completing an activity or completing a task for a reward. And it might just be a kudos and a sticker, but that's teaching them something. And if they can build up those rewards and earn something later. Once they get a little bit older, I think an actual monetary allowance, in early to middle elementary school is a really good idea. There's a lot of debate and discussion around whether the allowance should be for just the fact that they're part of a family and have to contribute, or whether the allowance is when they go above and beyond. So there's no right answer to that. I think the key to an allowance is coming up with a good plan and sticking to it. Because,
the sticking to it, is because that's what's going through my mind. We have gone through allowance cycles, I would call it, in family, where we are very, very good at it for a while, and then just the chores start drifting away, or we get busy, or whatever it might be, and then suddenly we're like, right now we are in a non-allowance phase. But would like to get back to it, because I want the kids to have their own, especially my 7-year-old should have his own money that he is spending and has earned.
Exactly.
But so how do we stick with it?
Yeah, I think sticking with it starts with keeping it really simple.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm of the mind, and again, there's no right or wrong, but I'm of the mind that their day-to-day contribution to their household, you can explain it to them. We're part of a family. And as a family, we all contribute chores, if you will, to the household.
Yes.
So whatever those day-to-day chores are, those are just expectations. And then maybe you set a couple, again, depending on your circumstances, the age of your child, 2 to 3 add-ons that they're earning an allowance for, but keep it really simple, because the more complex it gets, the bigger the list, it can really start to get, we get busy and it can fall by the wayside. I've had that happen with my kiddos as well. So I think having some really key weekly tasks with a very specific set amount that they're earning, that they can earn each week. And that's the money that they use, get to the store, and they're asking for the pack of gum or whatever it is, you help them figure out with that allowance and those earnings, how are they going to spend it?
Well, and let's talk about that too, because that goes into the whole needs and wants, right? And like, I think, especially for young kids, so they've earned this money, big or small, whatever it might be. It's very easy for them to blow it, right? And as a parent, you're like, oh, what? You're buying that? Okay. Do we hold our nose and just allow them to buy the thing that it's like, why are you buying this? There is no value there, or whatever. Or do we say, is that something we really need? Is that something, how long is that going to last? Like, how much do we get in their head about how they're choosing to spend their own money?
Yeah. So I think with their allowance, I think it is a good practice to help them make some decisions about what they'll do with the allowance. So having those clear jars, again, they're visual, whether it's just a envelope with, you've written the category of spending, and they put it in an envelope, they put it in a save jar. Help them segment what they're earning into different buckets. Saving, spending, think of that as the fun things, maybe giving back. So help them make a plan. From there, I think it's a great idea to help them decide, but I think it's a really good idea to let them make those mistakes, to let them practice making choices while the stakes are really low, and have them feel buyer's remorse and regret and realize, oh my gosh, I'm all out of money. It happened with my kids. They'd get a birthday money for their birthday. And go a little crazy sometimes and the money was gone and it was like, what did I spend that on? It's good for them to feel that and experience that at home when it's safe so
Yeah.
that they
The
can
low stakes.
exactly low
Yeah.
stakes. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So take us then to Target, where our kids do not have their wallet or their own money with them. What are some of the, where's that like, oh, yeah, sure, no problem. I'll buy that gum for you. Or, oh, you just want that Lego set. It's only $15 or what, $10. Yeah, sure. Throw it in the cart versus, getting back to that delayed gratification. And what are some of the scripts that we can use as parents when we're at the store and there are so many shiny, exciting things and they want to throw everything in the cart?
Exactly. So for the listeners who have younger kids, the sooner that you can begin to have those conversations, the better. And again, there's no right or wrong answer, but avoiding, if you have young kids, avoiding, because I've observed this and I've seen this when I'm in Target and other stores, the expectation that every time a child goes to a store, they get something.
Oof.
And it's real tough with grandparents, right?
Oh,
If they go to the store with their grandparents, forget about it. So if you have little kids, getting into a habit of walking into a store, even for yourself. I mean, I do it commonly, more so as I've gotten older. Walk into a store, look through the whole store, and walk out with nothing. That's a really good thing for them to experience. If you've come along and that hasn't been, the approach that you've taken, I think, again, validating the thing that they want, that looks really cool. I can understand why you would want that. Do you think of that as a want or a need?
Ooh, I like that. Pausing in the moment. Yeah.
And then maybe we're here for needs today. Like we're in the grocery store. Let's put that on your wish list. You got a birthday coming up, a holiday, that it's okay to want something, but you don't necessarily have to buy it today.
I love that. We're here for needs today, not wants.
Yeah.
And then that's, again, going back to that sort of externalizing the internal conversation with your kids. Yeah.
The other approach, just to mention too,
Please.
is have them and this is something, again, you get busy and it's so hard to remember to do this. And, I get it. Life is busy with working parents. It's a challenge, but have them bring some of that allowance money to the store with them. And, whether it's $5 and give them a chance to, it won't take long, right? For them to, whether it's the pack of gum or the bag of chips or whatever it might be, it won't take long for them to use up that money and, giving them that opportunity. Or, maybe you don't buy this today. And if you buy this today, what will you not be able to buy later? So it's really helping them to learn the difference between wants and needs. It's not about saying no all the time, but instead helping them to understand why we choose to buy certain things now and why we might choose to buy them later.
So just let's take it back to us as parents and, how can we model a healthy relationship with money, even if we didn't necessarily grow up with one, or it wasn't something that was talked about in our households?
Yeah. So I think we're modeling behaviors every day, whether we know it or not, right? So that language we use matters. Putting some context around, like we talked earlier, rather than we're broke, really talking about today is, today we can't spend that. That's not in our plan today. That may be in our plan for the future. But I think, as we've talked about throughout, modeling is sometimes just thinking out loud and having that conversation with them. Walking into a store and not having to, purchase anything. One of the things that I would, say to my kids when they wanted a big purchase, and a game itself comes to mind because, they were $60 a piece comes to mind. Now. They're probably $75 or $100 now. But I would say to them, very candidly, how many hours it would take for me to earn
Ooh,
that video game. So I think relating it to something tangible for them.
wow.
Mom is going to be out of the home at work for 3 hours, if you're making
Mm,
$20 an hour to buy that one game. So
wow.
I think, again, giving them the context and the details. Um, I have a colleague who she and her family would do monthly or quarterly money meetings with the family and, talk with the kids about what are you saving for?
Hmm.
What are you setting aside money for? What are the trade-offs that you're making in your day to day and involving them in that? So I think uh, the best piece of advice is to get them involved and
Hmm.
have that conversation. Uh, Even if it's a small savings goal, you know, um, allowing them to see that decision making and that process that you're going through your spending. And if you've made a mistake, don't be afraid to share it.
Ooh,
That's one of
I
the
love
best
that.
lessons.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's so true. In an age appropriate
Of
way,
course,
obviously.
of
But,
course.
if you've made a mistake or you're just a parent stressed out about money right
Yeah,
now, a lot of parents are, a lot of
yeah.
us are. So, how can we talk about it at home with our kids without stressing them out
Yeah,
about it?
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that as I said, the language is important. Talk about the planning. Um, making it clear that money decisions can be difficult, but we're figuring it out. An emphasis in our household was about the value of education and
Mm.
training. That doing well in school and pursuing education after high school, that financially, and regardless of student loan debt, but by all measures, we still know that that is the best path to ensuring, future financial stability. And so that conversation about the value of education and future careers to help you afford those things, I think that's all part of that dialogue. Um, but I think your child and you know how much you can share without creating anxiety. Some families, I think myself included, I was probably a little more open. um, I was not opposed to showing them a paycheck to help them kind of understand pay versus taxes. And these, this as they get a
Mhm.
little bit older into middle school and high school, but how much we earn versus how much we take home, really how many hours does it take to buy that item, that sort of thing, like really trying to relate it practically, because otherwise money is just this obscure thing that they don't see and they don't understand. And so as much as you can make it relatable,
Mm.
visual, um, and again providing that context, thinking out loud, again keep going back to that because that's so important.
You know what is funny? Just as a quick anecdote, like my daughter, 18-year-old, said, I don't like buying things with cash because it feels like it's not real money. It's the debit card to her that actually feels real. Whereas, the advice when we were growing up would be pay in cash because it feels real. Like you can see the money leaving your wallet and you're handing it over. It's such a different generation now where and it's been multiple young people have sort of expressed that idea that cash just feels like paper, you're just giving it away, whereas when they can
Yeah,
see it in their bank account and going down, that feels more real. if there
interesting.
was if there was one takeaway, if there's one piece of advice for families on this topic today, what would that be?
Well, I think it would be where we started. First of all, to just say you don't have to be an expert, you
Mm.
don't have to be great with money, but you're making financial decisions every single day. And rather than internalizing those decisions and making them kind of independently, whether it's you on your own or you and a partner or spouse, involving your kids and having a conversation with them. Talk with them about your future goals, what you're saving for, what you'd like to be saving toward, whether you're actually saving for it or not. Having that conversation in the household about money, and not being afraid of it just because you might not have a lot of it, or be good, or the way you might think good with money. You may feel like you're not, and don't let that stop you from involving them. Get them into the grocery store. Your daughter's perspective on debit versus cash. For younger kids, I think the cash is powerful because they can see it. It's visual. Having those savings jars, very visually present in the household. But I think the biggest thing is to have that conversation. And if you haven't had it, your kids are older, it's never too late. But I think that's where it starts. It starts, very basic and, very conversational, and just providing that context and that background for them.
Yeah, never too late. And it's okay that you are not an expert.
Absolutely.
Those are some really great takeaways. Mary,
absolutely.
Really appreciate your time. Thank you as always. Such an important topic. And I'll mention as well, we'll have additional resources on our website, which is wgme.com/raisingme. Mary, thank you.
Thank you so much, Adrienne. This has been fun. Thank you.
Well, just as always, a very big thank you to Mary. She is such a pleasure to have on with us, and a wealth of knowledge. This was just really a super helpful reminder that money lessons do not have to be complicated. They just really need to be consistent. And there were just a few takeaways in particular that really stood out. The first, it is never too early and never too late to start talking about money. Kids can handle age-appropriate conversations, and it really does add up over time. And then, as Mary talked about, just saying that quiet part out loud, even small things like choosing one product over another based on price, that can really help kids understand how financial decisions get made. And then, of course, that delayed gratification, that is a life skill. Tools like reward charts can actually be very great, kid-friendly ways to practice earning something over a period of time. And I gotta tell you, I loved the real life script that she gave. We are here for needs and not wants today. Yes, please. It is so simple, but it's so clear, and it really does help set expectations without a battle. And then finally, but gosh, so important, we don't have to be perfect here. We don't need to be money experts to teach our kids something valuable. And even our mistakes can actually become teaching moments when we talk about what we would do differently. So thank you so much for listening to Raising Me and to our sponsor of Sweetser Behavioral Health. I'm Adrienne Stein, and this episode was edited by Megan Littlefield with production assistance from Carissa Paulson. Please follow Raising Me wherever you get your podcasts, and of course, consider a positive rating and review, which helps others to find this message as well. Wherever you are, I hope you learned something new and get to take a little time for you.
Struggling with weight loss? Prolon's 5-day fasting mimicking diet is a clinically developed nutrition program designed to promote fat loss while protecting lean body mass. Developed at USC's Longevity Institute, it assists the body in entering a fasting-like state that helps reset metabolism and target visceral fat. In just 5 days, Prolon offers a science-backed approach to weight loss without extreme restriction or guesswork. Get 15% off plus a $40 bonus gift when you subscribe at prolonlife.com/now.